ND filters are like sunglasses for your camera. They cut the amount of light hitting your camera sensor so that you can properly expose your image to have a shallow depth of field or correct motion blur. And they're really handy for bright sunny days. I didn't really mean like this. Now this is a sunny day. Creating cinematic shots usually depends on nailing your exposure. Having the right balance of highlights and shadows, being able to control your motion blur and changing your aperture all helps to create the cinematic look that you're after. One of my favorite must-have tools is the ND filter, and here is why you should have one. In my last video, I spoke about log, and you can check that out in the description below. And log is great because it unlocks so much more capabilities from your camera sensor. It allows you to have way more dynamic range and just capture more information for your shots to do more with your shots. But log alone is not going to give us the perfect shot. There's actually a few settings we need to change first in order to get a more balanced and even looking shot. Now, one of the first things we can do is change three main settings that all cameras have: aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. Now, these are all basic settings that every camera has, like I said, so let's go through these quickly. ISO is a way of digitally boosting the brightness of your shot. Increasing it makes it brighter. Decreasing it makes it darker. And if you increase it too much, then you add noise. The aperture is the opening in your lens that physically changes to let in more or less light. It does this using the aperture blades. If you lower your aperture or increase your f-stop, we'll just talk in f-stop. If you have a lower f-stop, then you're letting in more light and you're also changing how your image looks. Less things in your shot will be in focus and you create this nice shallow depth of field look, which is pretty cinematic, very nice. And the opposite is true, where if you close down your aperture and you have a higher f-stop, you're making more things in focus and letting less light in. And the last setting you can change is shutter speed. Shutter speed controls the amount of motion blur present in your shot and also controls lighting. A higher shutter speed means there'll be less motion blur and you'll be letting in less light. And vice versa, a lower shutter speed means there'll be more motion blur and you'll be letting in more light. Obviously, of course, you want to make sure you balance this carefully, because if you want your shot to become brighter and then you lower your shutter speed, your shot could become very, very blurry. So it's a bit of a balancing act. It's a sunny day here in Malta, and if I don't want to have a shot that's horrifically overexposed, I'm either going to have to max out the aperture or the shutter speed, and that is going to look disgusting. But there's a better way. The ND filter. This cuts the amount of light coming into your camera and lets you dial in the settings that you want to capture the exact kind of shot that you're after. One of the key reasons for using an ND filter is motion blur. I spoke earlier about how increasing your shutter speed can darken your image, but it also lessens the amount of motion blur in your shot, and this isn't actually a good thing. This is something a lot of beginner filmmakers will overlook because it's a quick and easy way to darken your shot and get correct exposure. But a lack of motion blur doesn't help with creating a cinematic shot. It does the opposite. You see throughout Hollywood films that there's a natural looking motion blur in all of the shots. An exception for this though is action scenes where you want less motion blur so you can see more of the action on screen. And speaking of action, these shots here were captured using my Insta360 Ace Pro, an action camera, something that not a lot of people think about slapping an ND filter onto, but as you can see, it really helps to create a cinematic look because it's allowed me to lower my shutter speed and create motion blur. Here we've got a shot with an ND filter on. You can see there's a good amount of motion blur and things look really nice and cinematic. Now this shot is without an ND filter and I've just let the camera choose automatic settings. I think there's a clear difference in the quality of these shots and which one looks more cinematic than the other, but of course a lot of people do choose the automatic settings route because it's much more convenient. We've touched on how you can change exposure with your shutter speed, but you can also do it with your aperture. And whilst it's nice to be able to shoot at a low f-stop because your lens is capable of it, you may not always want to, but it is still a nice option to have. But doing that in the middle of the day can be very, very challenging without having something to reduce the exposure of your shot. Additionally, if we're setting our apertures to like f22, is it even cinematic anymore? On a sunny day like this is exactly when you would need an ND filter. Damn, that's bright. ND filters simply give you more control and allow you to create the shots that you want to create. So now you know why you need an ND filter, but which ones do you get? You Google ND filter and you will be shown 1,000. There are so many brands to go with, so which ones do I recommend? Personally, I choose Freewell, and I've actually bought 2 of these sets. I was gifted one, and Freewell sent me one to help make this video. So this is their version 1 magnetic filter system. This is the one I got as a present from a friend. Great present. This system is awesome. It allows you to magnetically attach 2 separate sets of ND onto the system. So you have strengths of from 1 to 5 and 6 to 9. So you're covered for like a little bit of sun to a lot of sun. You can then slide in a mist filter as well, among other filters that weren't with this kit, but you can buy them from Freewell. I really like this kit. It is quite big, but I think that was done to make sure that it covers a wide variety of lenses ranging from cinema glass to anamorphic glass that may have a wider diameter front. And this is their V2, much, much smaller. And it basically takes all the good stuff from the V1 and they just made it smaller and fits all of the photography lenses that we're all used to that have an 82mm front. The ND filter magnetically connects to the step-up ring, which you screw onto your lens, which I think is really clever. This filter provides you 3 to 7 stops of ND, so you're covered for super sunny days. But where this filter set gets really clever is the little details. There's a dual lens cap cover which can be used in reverse, and you can also use the mist filter standalone, and you don't have to take off the step-up rings that are on your lens already. The mist filter also just magnetically snaps onto the front of the ND filter, meaning if you buy any of their other filters, which I wasn't sent by Freewell, but they have things like the anamorphic streaks flare and I think a couple other ones, then it just magnetically stacks onto the front of the ND, and I think that's really, really cool and handy. And it's a pretty strong magnet. When I got this set here, I tried shaking it off the camera and it wouldn't come off, which I think is a good indication, you know, your gear is safe. I just put the filter on, yeah? So you're like, oh, where is it? Bruh. That's smooth. And like, it's got some, you know, like, I'm gonna do that in the YouTube video. That's a good test. Freewell, of course, make other ND filters. This filter was something I bought after I lost my first ND filter, which was a Tiffin variable ND filter, which was fine. But this ND filter has a magnetic lens cap and it's got hard stops ranging from 2 to 5 ND. I think they have another one as well, which is like 6 to 9. And it's a standard ND filter. It's very well made. The glass coating is great and it's got hard stops, which I really, really liked. But standard ND filter, you know, that you can pick your size for. And these filters are for the Insta360 Ace Pro. It comes in a 1.6, an 8, 16, and 32 stops of ND. Of course, it's not variable because they're square and they're made for an action camera. So that's kind of asking for a lot if it was variable, but these are great and they've covered me in every situation I've ever been thrown into. Sunny days, like, you're fine. It's nice to have the 1.6 ND because then if you just need like a little bit of reduction but not too much, then you're covered for all the situations you'll need. Now, is there anything I've disliked about ND filters in general? Well, there is one thing to look out for, and that is the cross pattern that can happen with some ND filters. Now, thankfully, this doesn't happen with any Freewell ND filters because they have hard stops. With some ND filters that don't have a hard stop, you can push the glass too far in one direction, and basically they'll get so close, I think it's close, that they just create this X. Having these hard stops on these filters is super, super useful. The only negative I can say for the Freewell systems is with their version 1 magnetic system, it is pretty big. And whilst there's nothing bad about the system itself, its size can be cumbersome because if you want to carry a lot in your camera bag and you also want to fit in these filters, they take up a lot of space. However, with their version 2, they've literally fixed that, and I can honestly say that there's nothing wrong with this system. The only minute detail, and I wouldn't say this is a con of this system, but maybe something that can be improved down the line, and there's also user error. The way that it attaches on is magnetic, right? You'll clip it on and it's on. But to secure it on and just make sure you have that peace of mind, like, hey, this isn't going anywhere, there are these little screws on the side here. And as you can see, I'm missing one because, well, these can actually come all the way out. This is a very small detail and like literally there's nothing else wrong with this filter set, but I think it would have been really cool if this had like a little hard stop thing at the end so these can't actually come out of the ND filter side bit because I've now lost one, and they do sell spares, but it means paying for shipping because they're not on their Amazon as of this recording. They're only on their website. So I think it's coming from China, which means like, you know, these screws are like $5 for a pack of 4, but with shipping, I'm now paying $35 or 35 pounds. It's just a little bit annoying, but that's it. Like if you don't lose your screws, there's nothing wrong with the system at all. I think they've done a really great job, and I'm excited to see what they do next because I feel like they're just kind of perfecting things that are already really great. Now, obviously I've spoken pretty highly of Freewell in this video, and whilst yes, they did give me the version 2 magnetic system, I bought the other 2 systems and I was gifted by a friend the version 1 magnetic system because he didn't want it. And you know, my thoughts are my own. They haven't paid me to do anything. They've just simply asked like, hey, can you make a video? We'll give you this version 2 magnetic system and, you know, hopefully create a partnership down the line. That's something I really want to do. Growing this channel, I want to make this my career. So I want to build partnerships with brands that I really like. And I really like Freewell. So I'm very happy to make this video because I can genuinely recommend them to you guys. That all being said, there are affiliate links in the description below. If you guys buy any of their filters using those links, I get a kickback, which will then help out the growth of the channel. And I can do more things for you guys that may cost a little bit of money to me here and there. However, whichever ND filter brand you go with, or whatever, some random brand on Amazon, just get an ND filter. They are so crucial for filmmaking. Maybe you can get away with it inside, like right now I have control of my lights, so I'm not actually using an ND filter, but when you're outside, you need an ND filter. And I hope this video helped you guys out and convinced you to at least get one, and hopefully to get a Freewell one, because again, they're pretty sick. The hard stops are great. And with an ND filter, you can continue to capture great shots like I teach you in this video over here.